Welcome back to A Moment in History. I'm Seth Udinsky. On December 7, 1941, the world was changed forever. World War II had raged in the Old World as Europe and Asia was carved into two camps, the Allies and the Axis. The Allies, led primarily by Great Britain, had struggled to keep the Axis at bay, led mainly by Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan. If the Allies did not get help from somewhere, they would likely lose the war. Now, providentially, the Allies would get their vital boost from the most powerful nation in the world, which had managed to avoid the fray until this date. Now, on this fateful day, a day which President FDR said would live in infamy, Japan perpetrated an unprovoked attack on the United States military base at Pearl Harbor in the Pacific, which drew the U.S. into World War II. Even before the attack, the relationship between the U.S. and Japan was contentious at best. The U.S. had shown passive support for the Allies by levying sanctions against Japan, which many historians believe to be one of the catalysts for the attack on December the 7th. That morning, a Sunday, several hundred Japanese fighter pilots descended upon the U.S. military base at Pearl Harbor, located near the Hawaiian Islands in the Pacific Ocean. The attack was quick, ferocious, and unexpected, with fighter jets raining fire on the airbase and dropping bombs as well. Roughly 2,400 Americans were killed, some of them civilian deaths, and 1,000 more were wounded in the attack, as many of the warships located in the base were also destroyed. The following day, U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt addressed the nation and called the day of the attack a date which will live in infamy. And shortly thereafter, the United States entered the global conflict and declared war on Japan for its unsolicited attack. Japan's allies in the Axis powers then declared war on America. But what was a date of horrible tragedy would be the catalyst for great triumph, as the Japanese learned in the years that followed that they had awoken the sleeping giant. The United States stood against Japan and the Axis for the next 4 years, and with the help of Great Britain and an uneasy alliance with the USSR, the U.S. would lead the way to victory in the war for the Allies. The final act of the war actually would bring the United States face to face with Japan once again, only this time it was the Americans who unleashed the attack, dropping 2 atomic bombs on Japan and forcing them to surrender in August of 1945. Now, in the years that followed the attack, some Americans, as they would also do with the 9/11 attacks 60 years later, would speculate if the U.S. government knew something about these attacks beforehand and intentionally allowed them in order to justify entrance into the war. While there's an attractive quality to these theories, we need to be careful not to jump to a conspiracy theory without considering the evidence. And the reality is, the most logical conclusion to the attack on Pearl Harbor is that the U.S. was deliberately attacked by a foreign enemy with no foul play afoot from the U.S. government, and this brought the country to war. And it was a war that providentially the side of virtue, morality, and freedom would win. Thanks so much for joining me once again for A Moment in History.